Oh, it's so hot. How do I rank videos when it's so hot? I'm gonna melt. Hello everybody, welcome to another one of these wonderful tier list videos. My name is RabbidLuigi. Last time we talked about Pokemon Generations, and it went surprisingly well, you know. I've actually been reading the comments after that video, and not too many people want to kill me, so I think that's a good thing. It's a happy thing that I've done on YouTube today. No death threats, no one, you know, there's some disagreements, but as a general consensus, people were pretty happy with that video, so... You know, if the controversial video went well, then why not just talk about Metroid, which is, you know, wholesome and wonderful, and, you know, no one can feel bad about that, right? Potentially? I don't know. But what I have here for you today is lots of Metroid games. Not as many Metroid games as you would think, because actually, you know, despite it being a very important franchise for Nintendo, it hasn't actually had that many games to it. You know, it's been around roughly the same amount of time as Mario and Zelda, but... You know, there's been some periods of time where it hasn't had a ton of games for it. Like, the N64 didn't have any Metroid games on it. Most of the last decade, I forget it's the last decade, this is a new decade. Like the 2010s, there wasn't a lot of Metroid, so they've had lapses where they haven't really done much with the franchise, but generally, when it's been good, this has been a really impressive franchise, and I, for one, can't wait until like 2025 when we finally get Metroid Prime 4, and it be like quite a good game. Maybe we can revisit this and find a place for Metroid Prime 4 in the future. But for now, I'm looking through this. You may be aware of how we do these things, where to start off a tier list, I look for effectively my favorite game and put it in S tier. I'm not so sure what my favorite game is of Metroid anymore, so what I'm going to do instead is just put Super Metroid in S, because it's like one of my favorite Metroid games, because Super Metroid is like the link to the past of Metroid, where it had the same idea, same basic structure as the original Metroid, but once you get on the SNES, suddenly you've got so much more power, so much more capabilities to make the kind of Metroid game that you want, and Super Metroid, as a leap forward from the first two games, is so massive, is such a massive improvement that it's like the quintessential 2D game. I say quintessential 2D game because we'll get onto later that the 3D games, if you don't know about Metroid, they're very different to the two-dimensional games, and Super Metroid is arguably, you know, you can argue it all you like, but I think it might also be kind of factually, it's like the best that Metroid's ever done from a two-dimensional standpoint, and everything in this game that future games would look at and really use, it's all good stuff, and frankly, you know, it's one of the easiest picks I'm gonna have to do in this list, so it might as well get out of the way nice and early. I know I said it in the intro, but it's been very hot the last couple of days. I'm kind of in the middle of it at the moment. I'm recording this on a Monday. You're going to see it on a Wednesday. Even by Wednesday, it's probably still going to be very hot, and the UK does not handle hot weather very well. So I'm going to melt as I talk to you about Metroid Zero Mission, which, you know, we'll get to the original Metroid towards the end of this video. But Metroid Zero Mission is like the best way of experiencing that game. If you want 2D Metroid, you go to Super Metroid. If you want to experience the first Metroid, you got to play Zero Mission, because what it did is it took everything from the original Metroid, kept the exact same structure of the game, but gave it like Super Metroid-like upgrades. Upgrades? Oh my god, the flies. The flies are so much. I need to, how do I kill them? Super Metroid-like upgrades, so movement is really fluid, and, you know, level progression is really nice, so it's a lot more enjoyable than the original because it's so much like Super Metroid, so it's hard to rank in that regard. But I would say that if I was to rank them, you know, Metroid up against Zero Mission always comes out on top. I'm just now thinking, how do I feel about it in relation to other Metroid games? A little hard to do at this stage. At the moment, I'm going to put it in A, because it gets a bit strange towards the end, because it adds this new section with Zero Suit Samus, where it's like a stealth section. It's kind of strange. I don't really hate it, but it is a bit of a tonal difference, a tonal collapse in a way towards the end, where, you know, suddenly Samus doesn't have her, you know, her suit, so you got to deal with just Zero Suit Samus with a plasma stun gun thing. So bit strange. I'll put it in A. A lot of people have been saying that I leave these open to change later down the line, but I never actually make any changes. I'll look at it at the end and see what I want to change, if anything. So for now, Zero Mission, happy in A. We'll move on. By the way, I only found this like seconds before recording. This tier list on tiermaker.com is done by my friend Alex Rochon, who did, like, you know, top 10 videos. Is like my inspiration behind my channel. So you know, thank you for that. I suppose you give me a very good tier list, and give him a follow on at that one, this thing here. I do believe that is Metroid Prime Hunters, which is I don't want to say an unusual game. It's a 3D game on a 2D, that doesn't work. A 3D game on a handheld, which is the Nintendo DS. It was an attempt to bring the Metroid Prime idea to a handheld with more of a kind of, I don't know, you're being hunted from all angles by other bounty hunters. Space bounty hunters, is there a word for that in the series? I can't actually remember. But it's a completely different dynamic, because not only are you exploring planets, but very often those planets will be invaded by hunters, and you have to take them down and defeat them, otherwise they'll kill you and kind of ruin your progress. And it's got this interesting sort of vibe to it that you're never really safe in a level, because, you know, at any point you might find a hunter and they might be really powerful. But also, you know, ignoring that slightly, because I've just remembered that this game had multiplayer, and you could play as the hunters in multiplayer, and honestly it was really fun. Like, the red guy, I've completely forgotten his name, he had like a sniper rifle, that was really fun in multiplayer. But actually, going back to the original game, the exploration factor isn't quite as impressive as the fully realized console games, but it's a really impressive attempt at doing so, and I can't really fault it too hard for at least trying to do it. So rather than, you know, shit talk this game into oblivion, like a lot of people really don't like this game for various reasons, like the aiming is a bit wonky, but I actually really like what it tried to do. It's not my favorite Metroid game, but I can't hate it for what it attempted to do. Quite early on in the DS's quite early on in the DS's lifetime, and really did a pretty decent job of it. You wouldn't get a remake nowadays, but I would, you know, if this game is cheap and you got a DS and, you know, the Wi-Fi is down so you can't play multiplayer anymore, at least over the internet, but I'd give it a go. It's a lot of fun. I recommend it. Metroid Prime 2! Not actually Metroid Prime, just Metroid 2. I forget the subtitle, but, you know, Samus fights Metroids, actually fights Metroids, doesn't fuck around with Ridley or Kraid. It's just a game about destroying Metroids on the Game Boy, in black and white. Very strange Metroid game. I'm going to say that for every single one of these we come across, but, like, it's a very different type of Metroid game compared to the first one. It's this thing that Nintendo kept doing for a while, where they'd make an NES game, like Zelda, like Mario, and suddenly the sequel is a little bit, you know, a little bit off the wall, a little bit explorative. They tried new ideas, and I want to say that Metroid 2 wasn't terrible. It was not a D rank, but it's not a game I would seek out. It's not a game I would want to play very often, especially because, like with the original Metroid, we have a remake now, and it's kind of done a lot better in that game. So, Metroid 2 has its qualities. You are exploring a vast planet, lots of levels, trying to destroy Metroids. There's a counter in the corner that slowly ticks down as you destroy them. That's kind of a cool vibe. It reminds me of Luigi's Mansion with the booze, but I don't know. I feel like the soundtrack to this game, if you've never heard it, it's out there. It's trying to make atmospheric sounds with the Game Boy sound set, which is not very easy to do. I admire the effort, but it's not something I'm going to put on when I'm driving in my car, because it's honestly, it's a bit bizarre. And you know, a lot of this I admire. I admire the ability to look at Metroid and think, hey, we can do different things. Maybe we should try and do different things. But going from a home console straight to a handheld for your second game, I think that might be what, you know, where the biggest issues lie. And for that, I'm going to put it in C. You might notice we're going down one by one on these ranks, and that's very much not deliberate. But for now, you know, Metroid 2, it's not terrible. It's aged very badly. I think that's the only issue I can really cling on to. Because at the time, I'm sure it was fun. It might have been interesting to see a second Metroid game on a handheld, but it's just not really worth it nowadays. The game that everybody hates and nobody really knows why, and actually we do know, because Metroid Prime Federation Force is not the Metroid game that anyone was expecting around, like, it must have been 2014 or 2015. You know, we're waiting for a new Metroid game. It's been a while, haven't heard much, and this is what turns up. The Wii U, by the way, was a really good console for Metroid, because you had the gamepad that you could lift up and, like, scan the environment. That's so perfect for Samus's scan function was built for that. So suddenly not having that and having Federation Force instead, big shock. Not all that fun. And as much as it is tempting me to put it in D, it's actually not that bad. It's very much multiplayer heavy, so if you don't have more than, 3 friends to play this with, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have a difficulty really enjoying this game for what it is, because it is like a multiplayer focused Metroid game, which kind of does away with Samus, except for a few moments. But if you can get the people together, it's a bit like Triforce Heroes from Legend of Zelda. Same kind of period of time, same rough idea, but it kind of abandons more of what the series was built on, and that makes it hard to recommend. It's not terrible, it's not a complete train wreck, it's not glitchy, it's not broken, it's just a bit tone deaf for Metroid, especially the time it came out. We've got more hope nowadays because we've had a game since then and another one potentially on the way, but it's hard to really defend that game for being anything other than a bit of a strange, odd. It's an oddity. It's an oddity in many different definitions and for many reasons, but it's not terrible. It's just a bit weird. And now we're done using synonyms for terrible, we have actually a nice little run of Metroid games. Because first up, we have Metroid Prime 3, which by the time you get to the 3rd game in a Metroid Prime franchise, or at least the trilogy, you start to see like different ideas being played around with. By the time you got past 2, you could see that they were trying to inject new ideas to a really impressive game. We'll get to Metroid Prime at some point, but what works in Metroid Prime 3's favor, surprisingly hard to say that, is the motion controls. And you won't hear me say that very often. I'm a avid, I don't hate motion controls, but I find they get in the way more often than not. Metroid Prime 3 is absolutely fantastic because of motion controls. Maybe not so much the actual motions, but the Wii pointer makes this game it's not the best Metroid game, there's other issues with it, but the motion controls make it really, really fun. You have like your grappling hook for various beams and, grappling hook? You have the nunchuck for various... grappling hook? You have the nunchuck for various actions, like pulling off stuff with a grapple beam and that sort of stuff, but the pointer controls, I can't stop saying it because it makes the game so much better than it would have been otherwise. And for that, I know a lot of people don't like certain things in Metroid Prime 3, and there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot more story than your average Metroid game, but the controls, you won't see me praise the game very often for controls, but the controls in Metroid Prime 3 just, give me more. Give me more in some way in the future, because I just love it. So where does that leave Metroid Prime 2? I do like it. I think it is the worst out of the Metroid Prime trilogy, but it's such a solid trilogy that is not... that's quite easy to do, because the other game is pretty spectacular as well, but it's nothing to be ashamed of at all. Metroid Prime 2 is kind of like the black sheep of a very, very successful family. So it's not terrible, it's not even close, it's not even okay, it's really good, but it does fall a little bit, a few layers short of, the incredible qualities of 1 and 3, mainly because of the boss fights. I remember not liking the boss fights a lot. There's a few fights that, again, they tried new things, but the new things are annoying and frustrating to deal with, and honestly, I would rather they didn't. So again, we're not going to push it very far down, but A is a good place for Metroid Prime 2 to be, because I enjoyed playing it, but after playing 1, it felt like a step down, and then you get to 3 and it feels like a big step up again. So I don't really know. Maybe on its own, if 1 and 3 did not exist, we would really enjoy Metroid Prime 2. But as it is, it's just a little reminder that they dropped the ball ever so slightly for the middle game. But other than that, solid game. So Metroid 2 was a bit weird, but then we got, kind of out of nowhere, Metroid Samus Returns, which is a wonderful game, but just because of the fact that it brought Metroid back to Earth, back to a really comfortable base camp. Because Metroid had been away for a while, Metroid had been doing some strange things, hadn't had a genuine, like, two-dimensional, it's 3D models on a two-dimensional plane. We hadn't had a two-dimensional Metroid game for a very long time. I think Zero Mission or Fusion might have been the last one we had. So to bring it back and to make it a remake of an even older game, and for it to be really good, is very, very impressive. I remember playing it a lot when it first came out. I tried to speedrun it. I tried to get, like, the lowest percent completion. I forget what they call it, but it's different for each Metroid game, so it's hard to describe. But I loved Metroid Samus Returns when it first came out. The only issue is maybe that's just a sign about with the 3DSs and how the Switch has come out, but I haven't really pursued it since. I played it a lot in like a month, and then once it's come out, once I've got into other games, I haven't really got a desire to go back and play it. All the other like high-class Metroid games, I would say, yeah, I would happily go back and play something like, you know, Metroid Prime 3, or even like, you know, Metroid Prime 2, but Samus Returns, I don't know. It's just not that... It's not that appealing to me, I suppose, and that makes it hard for me to really fit into this tier list. I want to say B. I think B might be the best place for it for now, just because, like, it's not bad. It's actually quite good, but there's just something missing. I think maybe its own identity, because it is just trying to be a better version of Metroid 2, and Metroid 2's premise is a little bit... It's interesting, but not that well-founded, so... I don't know. I did want to see another 3DS Metroid going on there, an original game, and, you know, Samus Returns, it's good. It's just not a level above. Hey, did you know that Metroid has a pinball game? I sure do, because I played it a lot as a kid. I played it a surprising amount as a kid. I don't really know why I have this game, but Metroid Prime... I forget if it's Metroid Prime Pinball or just Metroid Pinball, but how do you rank a pinball game in a franchise that doesn't have many spin-off games? Not really, you know, maybe Federation Force is considered a spin-off game, but it still tries to have the same kind of gameplay. Metroid Pinball is very different and very hard to rank, but honestly, for what it is, it's not bad. It's not the best pinball game out there, I don't think. Like, I'd have to make that list first. I'd have to work out what a good pinball game looks like. You know, Alpha Sapphire was, you know, Pokemon Pinball has some good stuff in it. Not Alpha Sapphire. Like the Ruby and Sapphire pinball game, that was good, but Metroid Prime Pinball, or whatever it's called, has some nice graphics. It's got some nice, like, ideas to do with a pinball game. I mean, honestly, how do I rank a pinball game? In a franchise that's all about, you know, Metroidvania exploration with a cross of, like, first-person exploration and a bit of shooting. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't hate it. It's just a bit weird. So I'm going to put it in the weird tier, because it's... I don't know. Can I honestly say that Metroid Prime Pinball is as good as Metroid Prime Hunters? I know which one I'd rather play, but also if I'm, you know, trying to not have... If I'm trying not to think about a game too much, maybe I want to play pinball. I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it, but it's there for now, maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Metroid Other M time. How do I do this? How do I tell you what Metroid Other M means to me and many other people who like Metroid? Because it is a new kind of Metroid game. It came out after the Metroid Prime trilogy had ended. Total open ideas. We need something new. We need a new direction to take Metroid in. What are we gonna do? How about Samus talks a lot? How about Samus is very emotive, very forthcoming with her emotion. She doesn't hide anything. She tells you how she feels through the voice in her head all the time. Okay, fun idea. Not so sure it'll fly though. How about some weird third-person action-orientated combat, where we kind of remove the first-person perspective, except for missiles. That's very important. That might help people. How about a story where, like, Samus has no control over what she does, and she relies too much on Adam, who tells her what to do and tells her how to feel? I don't think that's really good. Metroid was always a show-don't-tell franchise. It tries to do its storytelling through very little dialogue, shows you something happening. It's fine. Maybe you have backstory through the scan visor. You'll see certain little bits of backstory and environmental storytelling. That's good. I like that. Actually rewards you for exploring. Metroid Other M is a little too much. A little too... It just kind of feeds you all this crap and expects you to really enjoy it. And it's hard to do that. So I don't really know how to feel about it. I know how to feel about it, but I don't really know how to put into words how I feel about it. Because goddamn, it is not good. It is not a good Metroid game. It is not that bad a game on its own. If this was a new franchise, you'd say, okay, I can see where they're coming from. But the problem is, it's got so many other successful games to compare it to that it does really fall short in many different areas. And because of that, I mean, if I look at C tier, I'd happily play all those games. They're not terrible. They're a bit weird. They make me question what was happening in the creative process. Metroid Other M is sad. It makes me sad. D is where it has to go, and everything else can't even touch D, because it just has to be there on its own, where it deserves to be. I'm so glad that we're not going to go anywhere near Metroid Other M ever again as a concept. I'm glad there's no sequel, because the storytelling, the gameplay, the music wasn't bad. I liked some of the music, but even then, like, it's not atmospheric, it's just a bit bizarre, and not in a good way. 3 more games left, and I've got to find a place to put them. The original Metroid is not bad, but very, very, very dated. Very dated. Unlike, say, Super Mario Bros., which works with its arcade-like feel, Metroid is still a very open game, tries to do this Metroidvania, which at the time, massively impressive, but if you're going into it expecting a similar experience to, you know, Super Metroid, or, you know, maybe not Metroid 2, it's about the same as Metroid 2, if you're going into it expecting a traditional, enjoyable Metroidvania experience, especially with all the new types of Metroidvanias we've had recently, like Hollow Knight, you're not going to get that. It's too slow, it's too lethargic, it's too bare bones in a way, and that's no problem of its own. It's all the fact that we've moved on. The genre's moved on, Metroid has moved on, it's just fallen behind a bit. So, how do I feel about that? Where would I put that in relation to everything else? Because it can't go in D, nothing else can go in D. Can't really go in B because I don't think it's that good. C is going to get a bit full, but I think that's just how I feel about some of the more awkward moments in Metroid's history. You know, it's impressive that it went from Metroid 1 and 2. Metroid 1 when it came out was good. Metroid 2 when it came out, not so sure. But then Super Metroid. And then we're off. And then we got a great franchise. So you just had to get there, just had to get to Super Metroid as quickly as possible. So now the tricky thing is, I love these last 2 games. We're going to get into them individually for very different reasons. We'll start from with Metroid Prime 1, obviously. And this game, I forget if I think I have made that video, but it's probably the best GameCube game. It's not my favorite. I still think Wind Waker's my favorite. It's the best GameCube game and the best 3D Metroid game by a distance. I mean, I know that Metroid Prime 3 has motion controls and they are really good, but Metroid Prime is just a masterclass in game design, in level design, in enemy design, in teaching you what you need to do before you do it, in like environmental storytelling. There's so much going on in the background in this game, and the even more bizarre thing is that switching from 2 dimensions, I think the last game before this was Super Metroid, to 3 dimensions, while also changing the perspective from, you know, third person perspective to actually first person with more of a shooter stance to it. That's massive. That's changed so much about a franchise in one game, and yet all the key components that make Metroid such a enjoyable franchise are still there. How do you do that? It's like making Legend of Zelda like a first person spy thriller game, yet all the qualities of the franchise are still there. That is so hard to do. I have no idea how they did it, but I think that's part of the reason why we never got a game on the N64, because they spent so long working on it that they made a great game, but they couldn't release it early because, you know, they'd have rushed it. I would hate to see this game rushed. I really would. So it has to go in S. I almost want a tier above that, but I think basically what we have, at least in S tier at the moment, I'm going to try and work out where Metroid Fusion goes in a little bit, but we have the best 2D Metroid, the best Metroid in a 3D environment, which is Prime. Metroid Prime 3 has the best controls by a country mile. I mean, my god, just play that game and enjoy the controls, but I'm happy with that S tier. Let's see where Metroid Fusion goes. Because actually a lot of people don't like this game. That makes it a bit harder to rank for me, because it's, I'm going to say this again, it's a very different kind of Metroid game. Like, the big part of Metroid is the exploration, is the open Metroidvania style exploration that you do need to backtrack, you need to remember where certain things are, you need to come back to previous areas with new power-ups. Metroid Fusion, mainly from a story perspective, is very gated, very, very gated. So you go to one area, you do a thing, you go to another area, you do a thing, you go to another area, you do a thing. You don't do a lot of backtracking. That's fine. That's not so bad, because it's actually in service of something very important in the game, which is goddamn atmosphere. Holy fucking shit. Metroid Fusion has the single best atmosphere, I don't want to say of every game I've played, but like, of non-horror games I've played, this has been one of the scariest games I've played, because the whole idea of Metroid Fusion is you have like a clone of Samus running around, the SAX, or the SAX, I know no one calls it the SAX, or the SAX, because there's a hyphen, I don't know. We got this murderous clone of Samus roaming around, and you will find it at some pretty random intervals when you first play the game. it instills fear in you, because you can't do much to this thing. It's stronger than you, it's faster than you. It's like you're playing a normal Metroid game with a little sprinkle of alien in there, and that is a thing I want to see more Metroid games do. Maybe you do it with more of, you know, open 3D environment. The fact that it's, you know, railroaded like this means that when you do go back to an area, you do so for a very specific story reason. And like, oh no, an area is flooded. Now things are very different. So the tension in this game is kind of what is making me think that I should put it in S. Like, the exploration isn't there. It's not that kind of game. If you can get past that, you're going to have an incredible time, though. That's the thing. And I want to put it in S. It just seems right. I think I kind of have to, because I put so many games in C, it kind of equalizes the tier list a bit more. We got 6 in S and A, we got, you know, 7 in the rest. And that kind of works for me. I am happy with that. So we got the, you know, the best 2D game, the best 3D game, the best controls, and the best atmosphere. You get a game which has all of that. You get the best Metroid game. Maybe the next one. I don't know. But yeah, that is my Metroid games. All of the tier list of my Metroid games. Not that many. A bit of a shorter video, but that's good, because we have been talking about other games for like half an hour to 40 minutes. So a bit more concise this time. Let me know what you think. Am I very wrong? Is Metroid Other M the best game ever? Why? And also, what would you like me to talk about next? I had a brief moment before recording this where I was thinking, oh, I'm going to talk about like exploration in Metroid and Metroidvania. Hey, why didn't I just talk about Castlevania games? That could be fun. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do something else. I'm open to any suggestions you got. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.